So a lot of women think that having food freedom means eating whatever you want, but that's not freedom. That's another way that food can control you. Real food freedom comes from healing the root of your emotional eating, and that's where you can get to true sovereignty around food. So let's dive in. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And before I was helping women with their emotional eating, I was struggling with my own emotional eating. I never thought I would be helping women with this pattern. I was very much on a trajectory in science, in teaching, and I thought that's where I needed to be. But as I started to heal my emotional eating, I realized how all of these different paths I was on were really interconnected. So if I go all the way back to when I started to really have this poor relationship to food, I can really see it starting from a young age. Into high school, there was a lot of pendulum swings and restriction and, not eating, and then eventually doing a lot of diets and restrictive eating and thinking that if I finally fit into this certain perfect box, if I looked a certain way, if I was at a certain weight, I'd feel confident, I'd feel accepted, I'd finally feel at ease in my life. And even when I got to that place, it was very fleeting. And so all the things I was trying, it wasn't working to help me resolve my emotional eating. So even though I was actively doing all the things, the diets, trying to have a healthier relationship to food, trying all of these tactics that my therapist gave me to help me with food. Also, she handed me a diet book, but I was also seeing a personal trainer. I was seeing a nutritionist. I was trying everything I could, and I reached this really big breaking point when after about 2 years in therapy, seeing multiple practitioners, I didn't have a real shift in my emotional eating, and I literally threw everything out the window, and I had to start from scratch. I swung myself to the other extreme where I ate whatever I wanted, thinking I would finally feel free. And I didn't feel free. Yes, there was some relief because that voice in my head stopped, but I started to notice I didn't feel good in my body eating whatever came to mind. And that didn't feel good either. I was just on the other side of the pendulum swing from restriction to allowing myself, but I didn't feel good in my body. I had no sense of having a healthy relationship to food and what felt good in my body. And it wasn't until I started to really heal the root of my emotional eating, like truly get into the nitty-gritty of it, really start looking at my pattern, really start creating a process for myself beyond all of the practitioners. Because at this point, when I really started to look at my emotional eating, I had already moved to another country. I decided to move to Korea. I wanted to start fresh, thinking that maybe this would help me with everything, with food, my body, how I felt about myself, my confidence, all of this. And when I moved and I started to have even bigger triggers into my emotional eating, I knew I had to do something. And so I started to just find all of the information I could on my pattern, and I eventually found out I was an emotional eater. And even after seeing so many different practitioners, no one kind of laid it down and said, you're an emotional eater. This is why you feel this way with food. This is why you go to food. This connection was missing, and I had to start putting those pieces together for myself. And what I noticed as I started to heal this relationship to food, so I started to have a healthier relationship to food, seeing how it actually felt in my body, how I felt with the food versus eating whatever came to mind, and looking at my triggers with emotional eating, that's when food started to not have power over me. I was making a sovereign choice around food, whether I would have cake or I wouldn't have cake, versus it being compulsive or not knowing how it felt in my body. I could start having true choice around food. And so what does food sovereignty really mean? I personally don't like the term food freedom. I think that it makes us think that we can get rid of food, that we can throw it out the window, we don't ever have to look at it, we're free of it. The reality is that we need to have food in our lives. We need to have a healthy relationship to food. It's not going anywhere. We need it we need it from a survival perspective. We need to have food, but we need to have a healthy relationship to it, not a compulsive relationship to it, not, a destructive relationship to it. Okay, so what does food sovereignty really look like? Well, first of all, food sovereignty is about healing your emotional eating so that whatever pops into your head, any thought about food or eating this food, you can really discern, is it coming from true hunger or emotional hunger? With a lot of intuitive eating, the way it's taught, and if you're an emotional eater, it's going to be hard for you to intuitively eat because those voices that are popping up telling you to go to food, they're drawing you to food to help you cope with your discomfort versus your body saying, I really feel like a cookie or a carrot or whatever it is. And usually there are going to be urges that are not going to be health giving to your body. And so as you heal that emotional eating root, you can stand in front of a piece of cake and say you desire it. There is a hunger and you're like, okay, I'm going to eat this cake. There's a consequence to it. I'm probably going to get a stomachache after, but I'm okay. I really feel like enjoying this cake and I'm going to do that. I'm going to enjoy it. There's not going to be guilt after. Or you look at the cake and you think, I know if I have that, I'm going to get a stomachache and I'm really don't want a stomachache. I'm going to choose something else that feels better in my body. So maybe you have a gluten-free cake, or maybe you have some dark chocolate or something else. You just want something sweet. It doesn't have to be the cake. It's going to digest better in your body, and you make that choice. And there's no guilt after either of them, whether you have the stomachache or not. It's a choice you're making because you are choosing to have that, not because it's helping you suppress an emotion or numb out or soothe yourself. It's because you're actually genuinely wanting that. And what you're going to find when you have the sovereignty over food is that you'll start eating something and realize you don't feel good and maybe stop eating it or choose not to have it. And so you start being able to make these decisions that feel good in your body versus compulsive decisions to have something to take away the edge that you're feeling in your body, that you temporarily feel good, but there's a long-term consequence of feeling shame and guilt and physically full and stuffed and having digestive issues after that choice. And so this means that you're also going to choose the foods that feel good in your body. So I have this client who, she never thought she would be someone who craved vegetables or fruits. She loved burgers and fries. And after she went through this process of resolving her emotional eating, she started to not recognize herself. Like, I crave salads, I crave fruits, I don't want to have the whole burger, or I don't even want to have the fries. And she was like, who am I? Her body was talking to her. And that is the beauty of it. When we remove this emotional eating, this coping mechanism, your body's going to tell you what feels good. You're meant to know what feels good in your body, not because you think it feels good, because you are actually in touch with your body and how it's feeling. So if you heal your emotional eating, it's going to give you sovereignty around food. But if you don't, you're going to keep in this sort of pendulum swing from having so much willpower and restriction to rebelling and eating everything. You'll just keep swinging back and forth. And you really want to find that balance in the middle where you're making these choices for yourself from a clear, calm space because you've resolved this coping mechanism. And so you'll notice you'll start feeling, I don't want to say control. It's like you're driving the bus. You're the one in charge. You're the one making these decisions. And it doesn't mean that you're like super controlling and restrictive. That's one extreme. Or like someone else is driving and you're just like off in nowhere's land and you're just like swung to the other extreme. It's like you're driving. You can make the decisions to turn left, turn right, and you feel empowered in that. So I'll give you another example of what this could look like. So let's say every time you go out to dinner. So I have clients that they go out to dinner and they find themselves being triggered into their emotional eating. And before they work with me, they're just like, I'm out of control. So I'll stay at home. I'll just avoid the trigger. I won't go out. But as we do that deeper work on what's really going on and start healing their emotional eating, we see that one of the triggers is happening at dinner. Maybe they're not having one of their needs met. You know, I had a client, she was expecting compliments or to be validated about how she looked. And when she didn't receive that, even though her friends were really nice, it would trigger her into her emotional eating. And then she'd feel out of control with food, come home, feel like really crappy from that interaction, not take away the bonding, just feel like shame that she spiraled. But as we worked through that, we found ways to give her what she needed so she could really do that. We did that deeper root cause of this pattern in childhood and really meeting her inner child, giving herself what she needed, processing those emotions at a body somatic level. And then every time she went out, what naturally came up for her was to compliment herself, really give herself what she needed, do a short meditation so that when she went out, she wasn't looking for it from anyone and she could just enjoy her meal and there was no charge around it. And with this client, she found that she didn't feel triggered at dinner once we moved through this process. And even at team meetings, the same thing would come up. She had a team meeting and she was like, I was fine. I didn't even think about it. The charge was gone because she was meeting her deeper needs. And so food no longer had that control over her. She was now sovereign around food. And so if you are ready to gain this sovereignty around food, it is definitely a step-by-step process. And the first step I always give to clients is really to start discerning true from emotional hunger. So this is going to really help you start seeing your pattern and catching your triggers. And so if you want to get started on that, I have a free guide called What Are You Truly Hungry For? You can download it below. And if you are ready to really move through your emotional eating, you're looking for that support and guidance, a step-by-step process, and the in-depth tools, then I'd love to invite you to find out more about the Emotional Eating Evolution Program. This is my 12-week container that helps you to get to ease and confidence around food and in your body in a sustainable way. So if you'd like to find out more about that, you can find out more at the link below. I just want to say, if you have any questions, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.